Welcome. This is Inspired Conversations. I'm your host, Diane Dennis, and I am here interviewing Dana Brown, author of the funny, kind of hilariously funny book, Single Is as Single Does, Misadventures in Single Living. And it's just an adorable cover, and it's so much fun. Thank you, Dana, for joining me today.
Thank you, Diane.
Yes. Okay, so you mentioned that your book came from or originated from personal journals. What made you decide to go? Because as women, most of us have been taught by Oprah to keep a journal. What made you turn this journal into a book?
I had been doing journals for years, and then I had stopped for a while, and a friend of mine suggested I journal through a heartbreak that I had just experienced with the man that I had been dating off and on. And after I'd been writing it for a while, I read it to a friend of mine, and she was laughing and saying, "This is really good stuff." And it had morphed from just talking about the man to just my life as a single gal. And so I said, "Well, do you think it could be a book?" And she said, "Yeah, go for it." So that's what happened. And so here it is.
Well, the thing about your writing, it's so conversational. It's like you're sitting in a room and we're having a girl talk.
Good.
I mean, and it's got punchy funny. Like you're just be reading along and you're describing something, and all of a sudden it just bam, this really funny thing happens, and it's almost lyrical in the way that you have crafted the story. Which also leads me to want to tell the audience that you are a musician. You're a singer.
I am a singer. I have a degree in music. And in fact, some of my friends from college have read the book, and they've said, it's just like being back with you 30 years ago in college. You're just the same. You're just crazy and just say whatever comes to your mind and talk it out. So that's been nice to hear.
Yes. And the really cool thing is that this book you find or have found from your friends reading it and feedback that you've received, that this really encourages and supports and helps other women who are single, because there is in this culture, I don't know if the culture teaches this to us or if it's our own personal bias, but it's almost like if you're single, you're not quite good enough.
I think it's a little of both. I think sometimes well-meaning married people assumes things about single people, but I also think we might place it on ourselves when someone may not be thinking that about us. But it is kind of a self-esteem. You have to be affirming yourself in other ways if you're single and you don't want to place your identity just in that. You gotta adventure and experience other things.
So that's right to the crux of it, really, is that we as women are identified, and we identify ourselves by roles that we play in life. Like, you're a musician, you're a teacher, I'm a publicist. And if we're married, I'm a wife, I'm a mom. And those seem to be really important roles in our culture, especially our Christian culture, which you are part of, a very instrumental in your life is your Christian faith and your church.
They've been very, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, so that's what I was going to ask you about that, does that make you feel as if you don't quite belong because you're single in a world that's full of couples?
Yeah, I have heard from other people that their church relationship it's all about the couples. It's all about any women's event is about mothering or being wives, and they don't really focus on the aspect of people being single. They have needs as well. And I'm fortunate in the church where I am now. I don't feel that necessarily from the church as a whole, maybe from individual people. But it's heartbreaking for me to see people going through not feeling the positive aspects of the situation they're in. Whether you're married or whether you're single, there's ups and downs in whatever circumstance you're in. And so I'm just trying to focus on the positive parts about being single.
Well, and also we were weaned on Disney movies and Disney books, and it's always the poor maiden, whether it's Cinderella, Snow White, that, you know, her life is just kind of tragic until she's rescued by the prince. And I mean, it's just so endemic in these stories
One of
how
my
we're
favorite
not
movies.
quite whole and we can't really take care of ourselves. Someone has to help us.
Yeah. One of my favorite movies is called Ever After, and it's Drew Barrymore. It's a modern day Cinderella. And at the very end, when Prince Charming is supposed to come rescue her, she actually has already rescued herself, and she comes out right as he's coming in, and she goes, "Well, thanks." You know? So it is nice having a partner in life, but you still, you have to play your role and take care of yourself as well. And as a single person, you don't have that Prince Charming to do it, so you really are dependent upon yourself. But it is nice to have that partner, and I have a lot of husbands of my friends who partner with me to take care of my car and different things around the house. So that's nice.
Yeah, you know, we as women are multitask and we take on so much, it seems, in this modern culture. So it is nice to have some things that we offload for someone else, whether it's male or female. Now, you know, I remember, let's talk to the young singles out there, because I remember a time in my life when it was right out of college, and all my friends were getting married, and I didn't have any prospects that looked likely to be my husband. And I just remember feeling left out because they were busy planning their weddings, planning their future life, talking about how many kids they wanted, you know, all these dreams. And it felt really lonely for me because it seemed like that was the dream and I wasn't, you know, it wasn't happening to me. What advice would you give for a young single woman who is in that place where everyone else is going off and making a life and she feels left out?
Yesterday was Valentine's Day, and I was having this conversation with some people, and I remembered back in my senior year in high school, I had just broken up with my high school boyfriend, my sweetheart. And so that was right before the senior ball, the prom. And so what we did, other friends that didn't have dates, we still went and bought a prom dress. We all went out to dinner together and had a great time. We call it a rotic evening. That's romantic without the man, rotic. And so you just have to surround yourself with other women in the same situation and rejoice and be happy for your friends that are getting married and know, okay, it's just not my time, but surrounding yourself with other people in the same situation is really supportive in that.
And don't stop and wait. You know,
Yeah.
I see a lot of women just kind of waiting to get their lives going, waiting for the man to, you know, to be the engine to make them move forward.
Yeah. I had people, when I was getting ready to buy my house, just 20 years or so ago, they said, well, why would you buy a house? Don't you want to wait for a husband to do that with him? And I thought, I'm 42 years old. I'm going to buy a house.
Yeah.
But there's a flip side to that when you're waiting for your life to begin and waiting that, and then also jumping in too soon and marrying the wrong man because everybody else is getting married, so you become desperate and you make a bad decision based on desperation as opposed to love and the right decision for that. So there's two sides of that too.
Well, you made it clear in several occasions, several passages in your book, that you do not wait around to do things. Like, you have traveled coast to coast. You have lived here in Oregon. You have lived in New York. You go camping by yourself, which kind of seems very adventuresome to me. Yeah, you make it clear. Don't wait. Just keep.
I am too adventurous to just sit and not do anything. So a few times I've gone camping by myself, and then maybe some friends will meet up with me along the way. But I'm just going to go. If they can go, great. If not, I'm still going to go as well. But early on, I'd see friends that were camping and they were families, and I'd say, well, would it be okay if I came along on this trip, or is there a trip I can go on? And they said, yeah, of course, we'd love to have you. And some of those people have become my best friends, and we have an annual trip every year to go camping. So I would have missed out on that had I just stayed home waiting for something to happen.
Well, that leads me to another question that you address in your book. I think you address it in your book, correct me if I'm wrong, but it is a big question. What happens when some of your married girlfriends don't, they have couples parties and they could invite you, but they don't, or you feel left out because you're not with a partner? And the question is, do you feel that they're threatened by having a single woman around, or how do you deal with that where, your friends are all getting together, but you're not part of the plan?
Mhm. I have had different groups of friends that want that even number. They want the couples. So if I'm going to go, I need to bring somebody, even if I'm not wanting to do that. But then I've had groups of friends that will include single people, so they can have that odd number. But I think that a lot of people, when I was young, and they were kind of nervous, is when I was nannying, a mom asked the mom that I worked for, the internet, saying the internet has stopped.
No, it's going now.
Okay, sorry. But a woman asked my nanny boss, she said, how can you have such a pretty nanny? And she told me that. We just laughed because her relationship with her husband is so secure that it wouldn't occur to her what I looked like or what I was like. So I think that's, if single women need to realize, if that's going to happen, they need to realize that marriage's issue. That's their thing. That woman needs to find security in herself and not be intimidated by another woman coming around. So I just kind of have to stay clear of those women that are insecure with that and just thrive with the friendships where the women can handle it.
Yeah. Right. So before I forget, I want to make sure you have some upcoming events that we want to tell the audience about. You have a book talk at Jan's, a paperback store in Beaverton, Oregon, March 7th from 1 to 3. I have that one memorized. And you have a podcast coming up, but I don't think we need to give the dates because we'll be circulating that. But you're going to be interviewed on the radio. And you have something else coming up March 14th.
Yeah, I'm very excited. March 14th, I'm doing just a Saturday morning seminar with single gals about finding your identity in Jesus, as opposed to being depressed or discouraged that you're still single and feeling negative about that. I had breakfast with a couple of young gals. They're in their 20s. And we were talking about that, and they were very excited about it as well. So I have all ages. I have girls in their 20s and women in their 60s. So it's nice that we're going to have the generations to be able to share with that. So I'm very, very excited about that.
Well, you know what? You provide for, young 20-year-olds that aren't married, you provide mentorship to them to show them that you are you are lively, you're fun, you're funny, you have a life. Life doesn't start when you get married. Life starts when you start it.
Yeah, when you're born.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, well, I just want to tell the audience again, we're talking with Dana Brown. This is Inspired Conversations. I'm Diane Dennis. Single is as single does, misadventures in single living. You have some hilarious stories. And, they're all too about what happens when you're alone and you're living in your house alone and you're afraid, whether you hear a noise or, something seems out of place. We do feel as women in this culture, oftentimes vulnerable, and maybe more vulnerable than a man might feel. How can you address that?
I was very fearful when I first bought my house. It was different living in an apartment because you were surrounded by other people, but a house is just by itself. And so I was very fearful at first, living by myself. And I would come home. One time I came home and there was a huge leaf in the middle of my hallway, and it had not been there when I left that morning. So why was it there? And this has been, almost 20 years, and I wonder why. I still don't know where that leaf came from, but I went absolutely crazy trying to figure it out and calling my friend, helping me check the closets, thinking someone was hiding in my house. But it was having that girlfriend to call. It was having my faith in God to take care of me, that I was going to be okay. But for a little while, Dana tends to lose it. Goes a little crazy with that. So I would just say, if it's really bad, live with roommates and have that support system around you. But for me, I like living alone. So I've just had to woman up, put my big girl pants on, and get my faith through it.
I think that's a good point, is that some, you need to get to know, as you get to know yourself as an autonomous, independent woman, those are things that you will be discovering. Do you like to live alone? Do you like to be surrounded by people and be, with roommates? Do you like to go off on your own, or would you rather do group activities? Those are all things that you've explored to figure out the best way to be. Are you committed to being single, or are you just single and open to not being single?
Ready to mingle. I I go back and forth with that. And ultimately my answer is, if God wants me to be married, then he'll make it happen. I really don't want to go on dating sites. I just, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen, and my eyes will be open to it. But in the meantime, I enjoy being single. Being 59, I've lived a long time on my own, and know I do it well. And so it's not this ache in my soul to be married. But if somebody wonderful came along, sure, I'd go for it.
And relationships take all different forms as well. Some people are so used to living alone that they meet someone, fall in love, and still want to keep their separate places. So who knows?
Yeah,
but I don't know why you don't want to torture yourself and go on a dating site.
Yeah, I just don't see that happening. I went on eHarmony once for a free time, and I filled out the form, and it takes hours to do theirs. And the next day I got a response back from them that said, there is no one available for you in the Portland, Vancouver metropolitan area. And I just thought, okay, I already knew that. So.
Well, I jokingly say you need a PhD in eHarmony to fill out the eHarmony form.
Yeah, that's massive.
My brain obviously is not wired the way that the questions are formatted there. But so tell me a little bit about, churches, because, some churches have a very active single groups and single activities, and then others don't. Is that something that's important to you as a single?
It's not important to me, but I would recommend to anybody else that does, be careful which one you go to. I have friends that were really interested in getting married, so I said, yeah, go to this church. It's big. It'll have a singles group. And they felt like it was just a big old meat market, when they didn't feel like it was any different than just going to a bar. But
Wow.
Not really all churches like that. But I think, if that's what you're interested in, you need to make sure that it's a good quality singles group that's not out just to, make you uncomfortable.
Now, let's go back to this retreat on March 14th. How can people find you if they want to sign up for it?
You can go to danalynnbrown.com. That's my website. And under the speaker tab is the registration form. You just fill it out, and then I'll get back to you. It's in a private home on Blue Lake Park, so I don't have the location on there. So once you register, I'll get you the address, and we'll be ready to go. And it's also on Facebook. And yeah, I'm just very excited. Most of it has been really exciting for me because, like I said, it's all ages coming. But it's danalynnbrown.com, and you can sign up.
Yeah. Now, will your book be a part of the of the retreat?
In a way, I'll have my book there, but mostly I'm using scripture. I'm using the Bible to talk about who we are in Jesus, all the positive things. Because so many times our negative talk is filling our minds, criticizing ourselves. So I'm going to take those negative thoughts out and fill our minds with God's word, saying who we are and just the positives of being a child of God.
Well, we do that as women. We are so self-critical, and we're comparing ourselves to the media, the visuals in the media. Tell me about Mary Tyler Moore.
Oh, I was in high school when the Mary Tyler Moore show started, and I was just enamored with Mary Richards from the start. Her little apartment was so cute. Her best friend Rhoda lived upstairs. And I knew that I wanted to just have that life. I wanted to be a career woman. I wanted to have my own apartment. I wanted to have my best friend around, it was just everything. And the way she just developed in her job, she was promoted in different things. And I just thought she was awesome. And she dated, but she wasn't necessarily getting married, but she was okay with that. And it was just really inspiring for a young girl in her formative years to watch a show like that.
Now, was she the first single woman on a TV series?
I think she was the first that I know of. I know there was one that was a single mom or someone who had been married, but as far as I know, Mary Richards, that character, was the first to be so prominent to say women don't necessarily have to get married, that they can still have a life.
Well, there was that girl with Marlo Thomas.
That's right. Yeah, that girl. I forgot about it. Because no, my sister Crystal loves that girl. But and that girl had the prominent boyfriend, Donald Hollinger. So he was basically her guy the whole time.
I can't remember. I mean, I can't believe you remember his name. That's crazy.
Donald Hollinger. He was a newspaper reporter.
That is funny.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're a little bit out of time here. So I just want to remind folks that this is Dana Lynn Brown, author of Single Is As Single Does, Misadventures in Single Living. And it's just celebrating who you are as a woman, whether you're married, whether you're single, whether you want to get married, whether you don't want to get married. It's just celebrating the small things in life, being grateful and having faith. Is that a good way to describe it?
Yeah, and embracing the positives of the situation that you're in.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Okay, well, we're going to sign off now. And thank you all for listening. And we'll be back with another episode of Inspiring Conversations.